Hello, I'm Kimberly, and welcome to the weekend edition of the Native News Update. It's Friday, March 15th, and many of the stories you hear here can be found at IndianCountryNews.com. And here's the news for the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. A key provision included in a half-century-old Voting Rights Act that has helped Native American voters challenge discrimination cases is in itself being challenged in the U.S. Supreme Court. At issue is Section 5 of the 1965 Federal Voting Rights Act that has exerted a powerful influence in South Dakota for decades in helping Native American voters confront discrimination. In the challenge before the Supreme Court, Shelby County, Alabama versus Holder, the plaintiffs argue that the Congress does not have the authority to interfere with state elections, and the discriminatory conditions that led to the Voting Rights Act of 1965 no longer exist. Counting votes after oral arguments in the case, Laughlin McDonald, executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union's Voting Rights Project, said there are 4 of the necessary 5 votes among the justices to uphold Section 5. He added that Justices Anthony Kennedy and John Roberts could be the swing votes. A ruling is expected this coming summer. Legislation that would create a Native American Suicide Prevention Advisory Council in New Mexico was signed into law March 11th by Governor Susana Martinez. The 11-member council would assist in developing policies, rules, and priorities for the New Mexico Clearinghouse for Native American suicide prevention. The District of Columbia Circuit Court on March 12th denied the Cherokee Nation's request to reconsider an appeals court decision that reinstated the case of Marilyn Vaughn versus U.S. Interior Secretary Ken Salazar. The case was dismissed in September 2011 by a federal judge, but reinstated in December by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. The appeals court ruled that Cherokee freedmen, who are descendants of black slaves once owned by Cherokee Nation citizens, could sue the tribe's current principal chief, Bill John Baker, in an attempt to restore their tribal citizenship. The appeals ruling overturned a lower court's decision that stated the case could not proceed because the nation was not a defendant in the case and couldn't be compelled to abide by the court's ruling. The nation's Attorney General, Todd Hembry, has said rescinding freedmen citizenship was not a racial-motivated decision, but one of the tribe's sovereign ability to determine its citizens. It is not asking too much that in order to be a citizen of an Indian tribe, that you be Indian, he said. We believe that it's very important, and so did the Cherokee people, and we intend on representing their will in this case. The White Earth Nation in northern Minnesota will become the first tribe in the country to team up with the federal prosecutors under a law designed to improve public safety on reservations. The tribe will share jurisdiction with the Justice Department when it comes to prosecuting crimes such as murder, rape, or felony child abuse. Starting June 1st, federal, state, and tribal authorities will work together to examine those types of cases to see where prosecution makes the most sense. The shared jurisdiction is possible under the Tribal Law and Order Act of 2010, which gave the Justice Department discretion to accept requests for shared jurisdiction with tribes that are also subject to state jurisdiction in 6 states, including Minnesota. Though other tribes in the country have requested shared jurisdiction, White Earth's application is the first to be accepted. Sandia Pueblo became one of the nation's first American Indian communities to have more authority over leasing their land under a law aimed at expediting home building and energy development on tribal lands. U.S. Interior Secretary Ken Salazar and Sandia Pueblo Governor Victor Montoya participated in a signing ceremony of regulations that will allow the tribe to approve trust land leases directly rather than waiting for approval of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which sometimes takes years. Salazar said the new leasing regulations will encourage economic development on tribal lands and generate investment, jobs, and revenue for Indian communities. The so-called Hearth Act, which clears the way for the regulations, was signed last summer by President Barack Obama. It's expected to open the door to badly needed housing development on reservations, as well as wind and solar energy projects that tribes have been eager to launch. Sandia's leasing regulations are only the second in the nation to be approved. According to the Interior Department, regulations for the Federated Indians of Grant and Rancheria in California were approved in February. Leaders and elders of the Taltan Nation came to Victoria, British Columbia for a signing ceremony March 14th and left with deals that guaranteed a 60-year flow of revenue, as well as formal new powers to review resource developments in their traditional northwestern British Columbia territory. The revenue deal provides at least $2.5 million annually for 60 years as a share of water and land rentals the provincial government will collect from the Forest Kerr Independent Hydroelectric Project. It's the first revenue-sharing deal reached under the BC First Nations Clean Energy Business Fund that introduced as part of the Clean Energy Act in 2010. Forest Kerr, a 195-megawatt run-of-river power project, operates entirely on Tahltan territory. It will be the largest independent power project in the province when it starts producing power for the BC hydro grid next year. The other agreement gives the First Nation $1.2 million over 3 years to develop what Tahltan Central Council President Anita McPhee described in an interview as a lands office to assess environmental, wildlife, and other impacts of proposed developments on their territory. And that's another roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of Native News Update. I'd like to thank you for joining me and have a grand day.